Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Boon or Bust. And I need to ask my offsider, Mr. Matt Boon, why is it called Boon or Bust?
It's a great question, Peter. Obviously, I'm Boon.
Then I need to answer it for you. For your modesty, I need to save you. Boon, Matt, is an asset, isn't it? Shane Warne was a boon to the Australian cricket team, and you are a boon to the technology sector. So why not salute that name of yours and make our podcast titled with this?
Fantastic. But we want to make sure we're delivering all the good stuff without going bust, right, Peter?
That's right. But no, Matt. It's also a play on the mining industry, whether you talk about a boon or bust. And so the reality we want to make is that technology is something that unless you're doing it, you're going to be superseded by somebody who is more advanced than you and you'll go bust. So it's not an option to ignore it. Technology is the world around us and you have to embrace it.
I think it's a great point, Peter, because also when we think about today's topic, clearly there's one thing which can basically undermine everything we're trying to achieve, everything we're trying to deliver, and ultimately make us go collectively bust. And that's the challenges associated with cybersecurity. You can't turn a page on anything or pick up any manual at the moment without getting a conversation about cyber.
Well, Matt, I want to come on that point because we talk about businesses are transforming. They're becoming digital businesses. The reality is criminals are transforming. Mm-hmm. Criminals are becoming digital people. Mm-hmm. And then the reality is when we grew up, police forces around the world would have had armed hold-up squads that would have protected the banks if they ever got robbed. We don't have armed hold-up squads anymore. We have people sitting at their desks or in their on their sofas, dialing into people's accounts and robbing them left, right, and centre. And I think the real danger in the world is it's not organisations that are just exposed to criminals. Everybody, your life savings, your superannuation. This is the world we're in, and we've got to be cognizant of it and embrace the challenges it presents.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about these areas, Peter, you know, one word sort of comes to mind for me at the moment, that's accountability. And you mentioned, you know, that the guy with the mask on robbing the bank, and do they have accountability? They've got accountability to pay the bills at home. They've got to get the money from somewhere. But I think in this world of kind of cyber challenge and the trust issues that go with that, it's increasingly about who's responsible, where does the buck stop, and what does accountability mean? And we've seen, I think, play out. Sure, not necessarily a cyber issue. The recent challenges Optus had with the 000 outage, right? And we talk about accountability. Everybody's blaming the new CEO, right? Yeah. It's his fault. They're baying for his blood and his head, you know, when this all broke out. But he's been put in place to fix Optus, right? Yeah. Optus had a lot of inherent cultural challenges, right? But they're making him accountable. And I watched the other day, and you saw the board members from Singtel here in Sydney. One of them was here. And sure, they're saying they've got faith in Optus and they've got faith in the leader. But when you think about accountability, where does it stop? Does it stop at the CEO? Does it stop at the board? Is it the individual's responsibility?
It's everyone, Matt. It's everyone's accountability. It's all recognising that we're all playing a part in this digital world. It's not on one person's shoulders. The Optus one's a classic because somebody didn't follow the rules or the processes they had, and a fault came into the system that we had the network. Now, the CEO can't be micromanaging everybody in an organisation the size of Optus. It's a culture that needs to embrace it.
Yep.
But it's a word you used in our preparations, Matt. You talk about this complexity that's confusing people. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
In terms of complexity when it comes to the technology side of things, Peter, or?
Well, I think complexity in terms of the world around us. We're talking specifically about technology, so I think we need to sort of draw the discussion back to that. But you also saw that for many people, the world can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you talk about complexity as well, it's not just complexity of technology, it's complexity of engagement, of life, of work environments as well. But I think if you consider the challenges presented from a cyber point of view and the tech side of things that goes with that, what we see now in this current environment is not just a proliferation of devices. It's not just a proliferation of technology itself, but it's a proliferation of how we engage with technology. You look at AI, for example. Yes, AI can be used for the common good. We can use it to help ourselves be more effective, more efficient. Security leaders tell us they see AI as a way to help them improve their overall security posture and efficacy. But to your point, at the end of the day, when we think about complexity in terms of the bad actors and who they are, where they are, and the technologies they're using, I think are perhaps one of the major issues and threats that we face. But I think it always comes then back down to not just, if you take accountability to that next level, it's about ownership.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about cyber, do all roads end with the CISO? You know, all the challenges associated with cyber, do they rest with the CISO? Do they rest with the individual who might be the weakest link within your organization? Does that responsibility or ownership rest with HR, learning and development, making sure people have the right capabilities to manage these environments?
Making sure we're spending enough money on this sort of thing.
Yep.
But everything's complex until you make the effort to try and understand it, though, Matt. And I think part of this issue is people are throwing up their hands and saying it's too hard. But unless you recognize the world we're in is technology driven, your businesses are technology driven, your life is technology driven. If you all dismiss it as complex, then you're going to be a victim of that world. You owe it to yourself, to your organizations, to embrace that complexity, to unravel it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But when you think about that a bit more, Peter, and we think about the ownership piece when it comes to security, and let's just double click a little bit on the CISO, you know, the Chief Information Security Officer. We'll have some in the audience here today. Some will be reporting to members of our audience here today or working with them collaboratively. But are we empowering security leaders or those responsible for cyber to actually make the changes we need to make organisationally to be truly secure? Mm. Or are we just setting them up for failure and essentially saying you're there to absorb the blame? Right?
You're the scapegoat if things go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, is that the culture of many organisations? You know, we see that playing out in the press, in the news. Whatever the issue, whatever the challenge, it's like, whose fault is it? You know, is it a tech problem? Is it a people problem? But who's to blame here? It shouldn't be about finding the blame, you know, finding that scapegoat. It should be about understanding what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how we can collectively do things better together.
Well, what you're saying there, Matt, there's got to be an inquisitiveness about people when you encounter cyber attacks, not trying to blame people for why these things happen, but actually trying to understand the process and the methods and making sure your defenses are hardened to be on top of them. I mean, if you look at it like a military situation, if somebody attacks you, you don't blame the person for attacking you, or you say, what can we do to stop it? And you know, what is the value if you have some cyber event, if you don't stop and embrace the learnings from it, you're just going to happen to you again and again.
It's kind of like, it's where blame becomes understanding.
Yeah.
And understanding doesn't need to be that we understand why you attacked us. You know, we recognise the reason you've done that. It's more about understanding what was the root cause behind that.
Yeah.
If we don't understand the root cause of a situation, we have no hope of being able to sort of overcome that challenge, learn from it, and make sure it doesn't happen again.
But Matt, as you know, this is something quite dear to my heart, and I can't be specific about it, but my partner's found herself in a very unfortunate cybersecurity incident in an organization which, when she joined 2 years ago, said to her, we're a digital business. Matt, they had nobody as a cybersecurity executive in the organization. They didn't do any testing, any phishing. And yet when the incident happens, she's been singled out as being responsible for her negligence for this happening. Nobody trained her how to deal with a very sophisticated deep fake threat where somebody impersonated the CEO, had their signature, digital copy, and hoodwinked her into an NDA that really trapped her in a scam. And that is, I think, reflective of a lot of organizations I see. People want to blame somebody rather than tackling the root causes of why it happens.
Yeah, well, how can one be classed as negligent if one hasn't been given the tools to overcome potential challenges you're going to face? Not tools technology-wise, but the awareness training, the understanding of, and even have, kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek, Peter, but when you talk about some of this deep fake stuff that's going on now, even within my own family, we've got an AI safe word, if you like, which no one else knows, never used it online, nothing. So essentially, with these deep fake environments, it sounds really trivial, really simple, but it's one thing where, the CEO in this situation, you ask the question, they don't know the safe word.
Yeah.
And that's the red flag. It's not necessary. He or she may have been having a bad day and forgot what it is, right?
Well, but Matt, you're saying something there which I think is important. As we move to this digital world, as we move to processes being online, maybe there's a need to put into these processes something that's offline, something that a criminal cannot get hold of. Maybe, and dare I say it before I appear like a dinosaur to the listeners, maybe sometimes there's a letter. You write to somebody a letter. Maybe that gives an authenticity to a transaction for it. But there's some way you've got to put a step in it that you can be one step up, that your attacker can't get hold of.
No, that's a great point. So I think really what we're talking about here as we consider this, first conversation in cyber on Boon or Bust around the blame game is ultimately, how do we ensure, or we need to ensure, that cyber accountability or responsibility is shared, not siloed? You use a great example, right? That's not shared responsibility.
Yeah.
That's like, we've got an issue, you're to blame.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than, okay, we've got an issue, what can we do collectively, firstly, to address this, secondly, to make sure it never happens again?
Well, Matt, I'm going to give an example. I've just come back from holiday in Japan. Why, when you walk the streets of Japan, is there no graffiti? Why is there no litter on the ground? Why are people courteous to you in the street? There's a culture. There's a culture that people embrace. And that's got to be set from the top. It's got to be using examples. And it's got to make people feel wanted and worthy. And if you don't do that things, you create pushback and resistance to it. And the blame game starts. But a healthy culture is a culture where people are respected and embraced. And they will respond accordingly.
But I think also with security in this current environment, it really does come back to, when you think about that sort of culture, it comes back to the what's in it for me, right? What's in it for the employee, from from the broom cupboard to the boardroom at the end of the day. Because when you start considering that approach, and I've said this before, Peter, we need to take a whole of life approach to security education and training. Security is not a 9-to-5 problem, Peter.
No.
It's a 24/7 problem. You may not be at work, but what you do outside of work can then implicate things within the organisation as well.
I'm sorry, Matt, but I couldn't agree more with you on that, because these criminals, as I said, they're not mugging you in the street. They're sitting on their sofa taking your superannuation and life savings. It's not just a corporate challenge for you, it's a personal responsibility. And you need to sort of see, how can you feel confident in a world that's increasingly online and increasingly digital? You and your organizations have both got to understand, what am I doing to defend myself?
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned the broom cupboard to the boardroom, Peter.
Yeah.
I'm setting us up now for our next sort of conversation around cybersecurity, where we're going to really start to address and approach, if you like, the boardroom disconnect when it comes to cyber. And I look forward to that next conversation, Peter.